So after a pretty uneventful Sunday, the week has begun. Warm skies are back, warm weather is back, we're up past the mid-30s. The good news though is that the levels of the Danube continue to rise. Parliament is also back in session, and that's always a lot of fun. So today, again, like with every session, it began with a long speech by our Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, and effectively he went into what has been happening and who is to blame. So he spoke about how the word climate change had effectively never been mentioned by the previous government, and part of the reason why Hungary has such an energy crisis at the moment is of course because of what Fidesz did or didn't do. Viktor Orban was a key theme in his speech today, which is sort of funny because on one hand Peter Magyar has been desperate to banish Viktor Orban to the hinterland. He is currently in the hinterlands, or otherwise known as Serbia, and Peter Magyar was saying that it's unbelievable that Viktor Orban during this crisis didn't speak to Hungarians and tell them to come together and work together, but instead was drinking vodka and palinka with his Serbian oligarch friends. Make of that what you will. So, he said that the issue that Hungary has with water, with the fact that the Danube is running low, and with the fact that Hungary doesn't really have a way of holding on to as much water as it should, perhaps the situation is not as bad as in the UK, pretty bad. He said that there was actually a meeting of the government in December of 2025, when this same issue was brought up by Lazar. He is a former big head of Fidesz. He's actually supposed to be in Parliament. When he brought up his name, he said, well, of course, he's not sitting here again because even though he is an MP, he's basically never in Parliament at all. But he said that Lazar had brought up the issue of water. It's an issue and the government doesn't have a plan, and that might be a problem. He also said that letting fresh water go to waste like this was a mistake. But Peter Magyar went on. He spoke about how the Environment Ministry is going to start actively dealing with this issue. He spoke about how it's clear that TISA has already been doing this, as the very first meeting that they held in a town called Orpusztaszer. They spoke about the situation with the water. They spoke about the environment. He also said that even though they've only been in office for 3 months, they're already doing much better than their predecessors. He said that this August already there is 28% more water stored in reserves than there were at the same time last year. But he also said that it's impossible to make drastic improvements in 3 months. He also wanted to speak a little bit about his critics, and he said that they're not doing this because of some sort of ideological lean towards Brussels, but because these things are essential. That's absolutely true, and they've been ignored by Fidesz. So, he said everything, of course, is connected. He said that they've been monitoring the crisis since June the 16th. They've relied on experts in the field. When things were especially bad, Peter Magyar said that he was getting hourly updates on the situation, even at night. He said that both the energy and the water systems across the nation were utterly unprepared for this crisis, for this sort of heat wave, for this sort of drought. And he brought up that there are some points that they bore in mind. One of the most important things was the nuclear safety at Paks. He said it's effectively all good. Paks was never at risk. There was never any risk of a problem with the nuclear power station. He also said that there's some good news, that this afternoon another turbine is going to be turned on in Paks, the nuclear power station, because the Danube is 20 centimeters higher than it was last week. He said it was very important for the Hungarian government to avoid any blackouts, any potential collapse of the energy system. He congratulated Magyar, which is our National Electricity Authority, on doing really well, and he expects them to continue doing good work. He also said that the population's needs were at the forefront. They wanted the population to suffer the least of all. He thanked everyone around the nation for helping. He said that the water situation had sort of stabilized. In most places, there were no issues with water. He said 1,600 locations were helped with some sort of... About trains, he spoke about how there had been speed limits introduced. This was to reduce the electricity that they used. He also said that the energy network and the government had asked big businesses, big factories to sort of chill with their usage of electricity, especially in peak hours between 5 and 10 p.m, and that they all stepped up and they did it. He said more than 1,000 companies stepped in and said that they would actually do this, which is great news. And then, of course, he mentioned the last point, which is that the government has been trying to avoid as much economic damage as possible, but he said that that's very difficult. Not really clear yet how much economic damage has been caused by this drought and electricity situation. He said specifically when it comes to drought, the agricultural sector in Hungary has been hit really hard, with hundreds of billions of forints in losses. So we're talking billions of euros in losses so far. He said it's clear that Hungary and the government is going to have to rebuild better, as the nation was effectively not prepared for what we are in at the moment. He said that there was no actual plan ready for such a Paks breakdown. He again looked at Fidesz and said you didn't have anything ready. There was no blackout plan, no plan B effectively, and nothing that had been accepted by the government and tested by the government to see if perhaps it worked. If the shit hits the fan, how will Hungary react? There was no plan like that in place. He said that in the next 10 days there is no rain expected either here in Hungary or in Austria or in Germany or anywhere in the basin which affects the Danube. And then he started speaking about Fidesz. Started speaking about the previous government that Hungary had. He said that the opposition wanted to see Hungary have problems. He then criticized Viktor Orban for being on holiday, which again I find sort of ridiculous, because he wanted to banish Viktor Orban, and Viktor Orban is banished. He doesn't want Viktor Orban involved in Hungarian politics, which is why they have the Lex Orban, which means that he can no longer run for the office of Prime Minister. So to on one side say, you need to get the hell out of this country because you're a scumbag, and then the other hand today say, and he's awful that he didn't step in and do something. It's sort of ridiculous. He criticized influencers close to Fidesz and close to the opposition for going on YouTube, going on Facebook, and effectively telling people who like them to turn up their air conditioning to use more electricity. And he also criticized members of Fidesz. He actually said, shame on you. He spoke about this, and he said, instead of help, you went against Hungary. And then he turned to some sort of rumors that have been going around. He said that, while you've been telling everyone that the head of Paks has been replaced, it's not true. The person responsible for Paks is still the same person as he was before. Also, the head of the water is the same as before. He said they're all your people, all people you chose, but they will all be replaced at some point, and they will be investigated for the way they have acted. Then he took a poke at Paks 2. There have been plans in place to have a second nuclear power station in Paks, and he said that you obviously haven't done the maths, because if you think that the Danube needs to be a certain height to have one nuclear power station, then how high would it have to be to have two? He told the opposition bench looking towards them that just as you were with the secret police files where you didn't want to speak about it, you were cowards with the secret police files in the same way that you were cowards about the nuclear power station. And after this long-winded, quite boring speech, honestly, he needs to work on his style, I think, Peter Magyar, because he drones on a little bit. The first person to speak from the opposition was Toroczkai. He's the leader of Mi Hazánk, My Homeland. Said, why do you keep on talking about Fidesz? We don't care about Fidesz. Fidesz aren't in power. You talk about Orban, you talk about Fidesz. What we want to know is what you did. And he said that the Hungarian problem that we have in Hungary at the moment has been caused by Hungary. He said that Hungary loses 2 or 3 times the volume of the Balaton just to waste that goes out of the country. We don't keep it within the country. We need to be doing something about that. He spoke about his home region. He said that currently, because of the dry areas, there are so many dirt roads, but they're effectively impassable because they've turned into sand. He said ambulances haven't been able to move. There have been people who've been ill who haven't been able to get health care. Perhaps we need to have desert vehicles there. He might have said that as a joke. He also spoke about the meeting they had, hosted by the current president, Agnes Forsthofer. He said it was 2.5 hours long. In that meeting, he asked the foreign minister there, that's Anita Orban, about what steps have been taken with Slovakia and with Austria and with Germany to do with the levels of the Danube. Is there anything they can do about it? And Anita Orban apparently said, yes, we have taken all the steps. And then it turns out that actually she only made steps to speak with these countries the next day. He was trying to poke at them a little bit. And then he spoke about how Hungary and Romania are sort of different. So that in Hungary, Paksh, the power station, is operating at around 10%, whereas in Romania they also have a nuclear power station on the Danube, and that is operating at 50%. He said the reason they're operating at 50% is because the Romanian army was brought into the Danube and effectively chucked a bunch of rocks in and created a sort of dam-like structure to sort of raise the level of the Danube there at their power station to ensure that the power station could keep on running as well as possible. He criticized Peter Magyar and the Tisza government for effectively not doing something similar and sort of just letting things ride out. Otherwise, over the weekend, the person, if you remember a few videos back, I spoke about Peter Magyar and the head of the Prime Minister's office, Bálint Ruf, going off to meet this man called Baka. He's an old judge, and yes, the reason for their meeting then was effectively to ask him would he accept if he was offered the chance of being president, and I think he said yes. So his name will be put to a vote tomorrow. He will pass, he will be the president. Some people in Hungary are sort of rightly angry because when he was part of some sort of European judicial body and there was a case about 1956, effectively he voted against Hungary on that case. 1956, of course, being the year of our revolution, where lots of really bad shit happened with Hungarians. And he went against Hungary, he went against Fidesz in that case. When he was removed from his post, he took his case to the Supreme Court or whatever in Europe, who sided with him, saying that, you know, people in his position who got a job like him just can't be removed just on a whim. And now he has a job which is being offered to him because the previous guy was removed just on a whim. When it comes to judges, I know I'm supposed to think they're all great and they're all moral and they're all fantastic, but you know, we've all read the stories about, you know, the judge in Holland who pardons the Somali guy because he raped the girl, but the rape wasn't long enough. We've all read these horrific stories about these politically motivated judges, and most judges seem to be politically motivated. So, just like I lost all faith in doctors under COVID, every time I hear these stories about judges and how appalling they act, the less I think that, oh yes, they uphold the law. Yeah, you uphold the law, but you also probably uphold your opinion as well. But again, like I said before, who the president of Hungary makes no difference whatsoever. You know, the Tisza fanboys are going to say, yeah, he's great. And the opposition fanboys are going to say, oh, he's awful. And at the end of the day, does he matter or not? No, he's just a rubber stamp. That's all for today. If you like my stuff, give me a like, give me a share. Thanks.